Hello, welcome everyone. I am your co-host as we wait for our other co-host, Nelf, not Kumo. That's me, not Kumo. Just kidding. I'm Snow Blossom, and I am here to help co-host for the day on how do projects find their niche. With our speakers for the day, thanks for joining. We have Adam. If you'd like to introduce yourself, Chanel, and Chef Tony.
Hey everybody, I'm Chef Tony. I'm community director at Noodles and House of Bandits.
Hey y'all, I'm the founder of Tasty Toasties.
And I'm Adam, and I just found where the unmute button was. How are you doing?
Should I continue? Tasty Toasties is just a cute meme bread collection, and we have dreams of someday seeing our cute bread in stores worldwide.
Fantastic. Thank you. Chef Tony, Adam, if you would like to go over your projects as well.
Sure. So Noodles was a Doodle Bank approved derivative of Doodles. It bred out of a meme, and now the identity of the brand is the first Web 3.0 food brand, and the vision is to share culture through food. And House of Bandits is a project built around the graffiti artist Doodle2691, and it's basically going to be, it's like a platform and an artist incubator for onboarding street artists into the NFT space, as well as educating people on the outside of the graffiti world into, like just educating them about the culture and the etiquette.
Amazing. Thank you. And if you'd like to go over Mortiverse?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. The Mortiverse new project, we're planning on building the #1 Web3 native personal development brand. The goal is to use cartoons, games, and community to make Stoic philosophy become more culturally accessible for the next generation among us here in Web3 space. The goal being, of course, that can bring less stress, can help us feel happier, calmer, more resilient, while have fun doing it. So it's a personal development initiative to try FUD-free Web3.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that short summary. And Nelf has been able to just join us recently. So Nelf, if you would like to give an introduction as amazing co-host.
Cool. Hello. So I'm Z, official, unofficial co-host of Kumo Talks. At the same time, also the head of things at RCC. I think RCC basically functions similar to what Chef Tony was saying. It's a bit of an incubator, but we have a focus on bringing animators into the NFT space. Recently, obviously, we launched Invisible Friends, of which we also have Slim Hoods and the Moodverse as well. So definitely more to come. And I think this is a very nice mix of speakers today because we all have a very cool niche within the space. So it's great. Looking forward to chatting with you guys today.
Exactly. And that's the perfect transition to just bring us up to speed on the category for today's discussion, which is how do projects find their niche? Nelf, as you said, each project, Tasty Toasties, think Chanel, Mortiverse, Adam, Chef Tony with Noodles. It's so many different niches with almost the same goal of just progressing what we as people and what the communities have access to either achieve their dreams, achieve their goals, to experience new things, or to be able to share and just interact with one another through different mediums. So I'd like to kick it off to you, Tony, to start us off with Noodles, since you brought up food and sharing culture through food. What do you think is the baseline for just when some project wants to start off trying to discover what their niche is?
Yeah, so I would say, one thing, like about companies, governments, everything. There's people behind everything, especially an NFT project. So I think in terms of, you kind of ask yourself, like, why am I wanting to build in Web3? And a big part about it is, like, it kind of gives people the power and funding to build things that otherwise they couldn't really easily do. So, I guess in terms of our founders, like Justin, he eats noodles like at least 2 meals a day. Like, he's Indonesian and he isn't. And we're all definitely foodies. So in terms of that, like trying to enter into the food arena is difficult. I guess like if you open a restaurant, that's one way to enter, but it's tough. So in terms of noodles, it's really just like we love food, and that's just like what gets us going. So I think basically I'd say the simplest way is something that you love is that. I think that's a good way to start with, because it's going to take a lot of your time. You know what I mean? When you build a project, it's like not your side thing. Some people do it on the side. Truly, like a passion project needs to be something that you love.
Yeah, no, I agree with you perfectly. And I think at the same time, taking a step back, if you just look in general at the NFT space, it is a niche within the whole Web3. So the mix between DeFi protocols and the larger crypto ecosystem as well. So I think starting based off of that, the reason why community is so important and why identifiers within certain projects are so important is because we're already in a niche within a niche, right? So I think at the end of the day, people and the community matter a lot more, especially for the stage that we are at right now. Don't like to go into the whole cliche of saying that we're early and everything, but it is what it is. So I think having identifiers within the project is always very important, especially like to build on that niche. And at the same time, based on what so building off of what Tony was saying as well, for having the passion to do. To pursue a project is very much how it all gets started anyway. So, yeah.
Very cool. Well, I'll go next if you like. It's been my experience just looking back across Web 2 as well as in Web 3 that in terms of identifying a niche for a body of work, there are really two ways of doing it. Either you find the niche or the niche finds you. And both are entirely reasonable and appropriate ways to go about it. If you find your niche, then you have usually a body of work or a plan for a body of work that you love, that you want to see thrive in the market. And so you build on-ramps for different groups of people to find that work so that it can thrive in the way that you plan for it. And that I'd say it's the most popular route. It makes you a parent of the work. And then there's when the niche finds you, where you have a community or a cause that you love, rather than necessarily a body of work that comes first that you want to see thrive. So you want to see the community or the cause thrive. And then you build bodies of work for a group of people so that they can. It's a less popular route, but where the former model makes you a parent, the latter model makes you more of a leader. Not because you've built the tribe necessarily, but because the tribe needed you. It needed somebody to step up and try and fill the gap and solve a pain point or a problem, or to love on those body of people in a way that perhaps they haven't been before. So it's those are the two sort of big buckets of niche finding. Our work, for example, with the Mortiverse, that was born in the latter camp. It was a niche that found Kezi, my wife, and I late last year. Some of you already, who've been in our world will know. We went through a period late last year where we lost someone. It was an incredibly difficult time. We almost lost Kezi as well due to some complications. And during that chapter of life, it made us think that since Stoic philosophy, which is something that we'd been students of for a long time, and the recently discovered NFT world, which was something that was getting a smile out of Kezi. One of the few things it did at the time. It made us think, well, if the combination of those two things can help get through a really difficult time with a certain amount of peace and calm, as much as you can given that sort of situation, then surely it can help other people too. And the start was on other people rather than necessarily a body of work. So we said, okay, these people, these Web3 people, this Web3 space, this Web3 community of communities, it's full of people who are freaking out over all kinds of stuff. You know, it's not life or death. Life or death is life or death. You know, what if we could build and collaborate and embody the spirit of the space without all of the FUD and the panic and the nonsense? What could that make by way of a more prosperous future for everybody? And so we started there and then thought, okay, well, Stoic philosophy isn't particularly fun. Epictetus's Enchiridion sounds like a cheese-based Mexican dish rather than a place that you go to learn. So, you know, what formats do people love to learn and love to engage in? What does that look like? And it started from there, which put it into the niche Finding Us. So for finding a niche, I'd say there are two different ways. Neither is better than the other, but it's great to recognize which one it is, because it changes the rules. Are we being a parent of our work, or are we being a representative, an advocate for a body of people? And then all of the questions that follow that point tend to become a lot clearer.
That's amazing. I love that framework. I think you made it really structured, and the journey that you shared is really touching. I don't think I can follow that because but my niche. So I think what I've always been drawn to, and I think I'm relatively decent at, is understanding what makes people tick. And that's why I kind of like marketing and branding in general, because a lot of it is reliant on what makes people tick, and then being able to form or tell stories to them. And of course, you know, if you work in advertising, a lot of it, the ultimate goal is to capture mind share so that they would buy a product. But you don't necessarily have to have that as the end goal. It's just the processes to get to think in that space. I think that's something I've generally been okay at, or good at, I hope. So when I first learned about Web3, I felt that it was the most amazing marketing tool that I've seen pop up in a while, and I have completely missed the TikTok train. But and then I guess when e-commerce first came out and when social media first came out, I saw a lot of people start, you know, their own businesses off those platforms, and I think I was much younger at that point. I'm not very young, nor am I very old. I'm just kind of like in the middle of life now, and really had the guts to kind of quit my corporate job to explore starting my own thing. But when I learned about crypto in 2017, I felt like, wow, what a great equalizer. But then of course the market crashed, so I kind of had a bit of doubt about it, kept an eye on it. But when everything came back and NFTs kind of started changing the game, that's when I was like, this is a fantastic entry point to the space from the point of a marketer. So I would say that was more my niche. And how I came up with Tasty Toasties was because I always wanted to start selling my own pajamas or blankets just because I like to sleep under a brand called Toasty. But again, not a great retail model. Just something that I would fantasize about. And then I thought, what a fantastic way to maybe kickstart a line of cute stuff. Kind of like, so I'm not necessarily going into merch in the sense of like t-shirts, hoodies, I think the typical stuff that we see. A lot of vanity brands do. Like, what I want to do was just like plushies for a start, you know, soft things that make you feel warm and toasty. And then I kind of used the bread to represent a meme which I thought was very significant of the NFT space during the bull run, which is like, let's get this bread, let's get some dough, let's make money. So I kind of wanted to make sure that it was a NFT meme, potentially, but also for people who don't know anything about the meme culture of NFTs, eventually, when they see the bread as plushies, you can just be like, oh, cute bread, I want that on my bed. So that was kind of my niche. I think just enjoying the word in and of itself, toasty, which means to feel comfortable, and then applying that to what I felt was a very interesting marketing tool, to grow a community and then kickstart a business. And of course, being new in the space, I'm very regardless, of how the project has gone over time. In like 2 years, people will be like, oh my gosh, like these were the OG projects. So all of us in this cohort, all very new, and I grew up watching people start businesses on social media and felt like, hey, if they could do that, I could do that too. And finally, I found a new way to do it. So yeah, for people who want to find their niche, I think looking like step one, if you look at your strengths, and what you're good at, I think depending on what age you're at, I think if you're like much younger, you have more time, time's not working against you. There's more room to explore. So you don't necessarily need to find a niche. But for me, like I've been working in corporate a few years already, so I felt like, okay, I know this is what I'm good at. Let me just tap into those strengths and narrow down there. And for everything else that I'm not so good at, let's try and see if I can find help or buy some time so I can learn those skills. So I would just ask people to just first, just be really aware of your strengths, what you're good at, and be willing to surrender those things that you're not good at to other people who are way smarter or faster than you at those other things, right? Because we all come with our own strengths. Yeah.
No, that is perfect. You didn't have to worry about falling at him because you covered that perfectly. I wanted to touch on a point that Adam, you made regarding finding the niche or the niche finding you, because Chanel, while listening to you, you kind of furthered that point along. That's something that going forward, especially with the state of the market and in the origins of the space, many people come into the space for their own personal reasons that don't originally stem from creating a project. But as they navigate and they become more established in the space, like the experiences, while they're either in the space or in their own life, like with you, Adam, outside of the space, that leads them to create a project. So I'd like to hear from you, what are your thoughts on having a niche prior to creating a project or creating a project and then finding a niche, and how that plays into a founder and team's resilience in surviving difficult times, if any?
It's a super challenging question, by the way. It feels like I think we could write an essay on that. But so I think I do have I would say, I guess not really, but some reference to that, right? And it's all really around Invisible Friends. So, I think when Marcus, who's the artist for Invisible Friends, first had the idea of exploring NFTs and a generative collection in general, what he had prior to this was that he had built a brand around sort of doing custom animations for brands that were interested in that sort of work for marketing purposes. And at the same time, he also had an education aspect where he had courses online where he shared about how he did his style of animation. So when coming into the NFT, he already had a niche in the Web2 space. But then obviously with NFTs in general, the whole market as it was earlier this year, late last year, the hype that generated around it was crazy, right? So I think for us, when we were launching Invisible Friends, we always had the idea that, we were in a niche in the space in terms of art. We loved animations, we loved walk cycles, even other different cycles that we're currently exploring internally. But we were very comfortable with that. I think what changed for us is that we didn't sort of expect the hype to take over that much. And when it did, and obviously, it resulted in a high floor and then a dipping floor all the way until where it is now, you get a lot of FUD. But at the same time, you also come to realize that there are a lot of people who are actually very comfortable, sort of being in the space with you. So I think then that in and of itself sort of formed another niche within the space for us, right? I think what we have now is a very strong core group of creators, not just within the artist base, but also within the community itself. So people have launched businesses, people have launched different derivative projects of sorts based on the art. So I would say, it's a very long-winded answer to Snow's question, but I think, I think projects, businesses, companies in general can always end up having multiple niches. I think it's just to make sure that as a team, as a creator, that you understand what the value is for the holders, for the extended community, and for yourself as well. Right? And then, as long as you don't lose sight of that, then it's kind of okay. So might have gone off on a slight tangent, but hopefully you went across.
Love that. If I might build on top of what you said there, mate, I think if we look at what really we're choosing a North Star to build toward, got the niche first or not. If we start without a niche, then the work that's before us is the North Star. So we build and we enjoy the process of building. It's not about the reception necessarily. People who like it will. Whereas if we start with a niche, then we make the community a North Star. We can listen and we can build. We can enjoy the process of serving people. Again, not about the reception. It just means that we get to keep loving and keep serving and keep listening until it dials in the way that we want. But it's still not necessarily about the reception. That's not necessarily. It's a brittle North Star to work toward in the interest of building long-lasting, resilient work. The Stoics would talk about, alongside the cardinal virtues, they'd talk about the dichotomy of control, our sphere of choice, as Epictetus will call it, where we get to choose and control so few things. One thing we can't control is other people's feelings and our reputation, and these sorts of things. We've got no control over that. We can control what we do. And so to build with either North Star in mind, whether it's without the niche, to build the work and make the work the joy of the work, the North Star, and letting people know, or if we start with the community and the niche in mind and let that be the North Star, then we just have the joy and privilege of getting to serve them every day. So my wager is that it doesn't really matter. It only matters depending on what you've chosen for your North Star to be.
Could you repeat the original question? I kind of lost it.
No, you're totally fine. And thank you, Adam and Alphasfire. The question was essentially, what kind of an impact or role do you think it plays to if a founder in a team has a niche prior to creating a project, or creating a project and then finding a niche, if any?
Well, I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. Like everyone's kind of a product of their experiences. And bringing in an outside perspective, like, let's just say, like, you're a banker and somebody is a constructor, guys work together. I think that's one of the cool parts about Web3 is you have people from super diverse backgrounds, transcends borders, working together on a common project, right? And I think that everybody has their strengths, and we, at least in my experience in Web3, like, I think everybody tries to put people in those specialized roles. But myself, like, I came into Web3 as a law student and had no idea that I was going to start building. I was just like on Twitter, like, enjoying having fun with people, making people laugh. And then I got onboarded onto the team because they're like, hey, we really like what you're doing. I guess like I was just kind of marketing for them. And then they're like, yeah, like, here, like, get a role, get our Twitter, get this stuff. And then from there, I mean, I dropped out of law school and I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, I enjoy being creative and like making people happy. And if I'm able to do that through the intellectual property of people who I previously didn't know does, like, more power to it. I think that because our space is so experimental, there can be plenty of people who like initially are consumers that can become the producers.
Yeah, I think, we've not seen like one fixed path necessarily in the last year in the space. Exactly, the space is so experimental. I think what we're seeing is people coming in with their niches or what they think is their niche. And I think that's important maybe at the start, of telling people what is it that you want to do, because there is some level of credibility that people would measure you by. If you say you want to do something and I don't know you and you're telling me you've never done it before, I might be doubtful. So I think there is merit in having a niche before you start the project, so at least you can tap into that well of experience, if any, or if your project is dependent on that. And it helps to focus the vision, to make it very clear what is it that the project wants to achieve, rather than saying, I want to do every single thing under the sun. At the start, it should be a clear focus on, I just want to do ABC. That's it first, right? And then after that, when the project's stronger, it's bigger, I think then it'll be easier to go out and find other people with their own strengths and kind of join and help you expand in those areas. Yeah, actually, I think maybe the way I'm leaning towards it is, yes, you should start with a specific point of view. I don't know if that's necessarily a niche, but there has to be a point of view. Otherwise, very general, then what exactly is the differentiating point between one project versus another project? So I don't necessarily think it has to be a niche, but it has to be a point of view. Otherwise, yeah, it's going to be a bit hard to cut out of the noise without that, at least at the start.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And I think, and at this time also, I think I wanted to flip like the topic on its head, right? Because, while people find their niche, while people, sort of construct a narrative around a project or something that they're passionate about, one thing we all are definitely very familiar with is FUD. And I definitely want to talk about how FUD can sort of insta niche or the direction that projects are headed, just because sometimes, the pressure just amounts too much on the creators to a point where they feel that they need to cater to, short-term gains or, short-term trends. So, shifting the entire narrative of the project so that, they can meet the FUDers in chat, basically. And my personal view on this, obviously, is that, if you're convinced by something, if you have that conviction, then stick to it, right? Eventually, yeah, it's going to suck, right? There's going to be a lot of hate, but it's called a niche for a reason, because it's something you're good at, you're passionate about. It's something that you will build with or without funding, with or without a community, and everything else, basically, like the community, people who enjoy your art, people who enjoy you as a person, just adds on top of that, right? So I would definitely love to hear your points of view on how, there are some projects that will amend their roadmap based on FUD. And, how do you guys basically see that?
I love this topic. I think, responding to FUD is necessary. I think that is something that, everybody would measure project founders on, like how they deal with FUD. Because that's like crisis control, crisis management, right? But at the end of the day, I feel like it is a free and open market, and if someone disagrees with the founder's vision or the project's vision, and they aped in without first reading what it's about, or they didn't know what it was, they just minted it because their friend told them to mint, then the responsibility of, making the floor price go up, it isn't necessarily on the team or the founder, because unless that was the goal of the project, because there's some projects that's their goal, right? Sure, fine. But not all projects were built that way or with that intention. So it really depends on who is funding, why are they funding, like what is their intention behind it? Is it a perverse incentive for themselves to gain at the cost of what was the original vision? So I think these are like questions that I think founders need to really ask themselves when they read a certain piece of FUD that comes, and just wonder, like, is this person's intention malicious, or are they really trying to make the project better in the long run, or whatever time frame that the project is committed for? Because some projects, I think they're just destined for, like, maybe it's just a 3-year thing. We're going to work on this, we're going to deliver in 3 years, the end, so it really depends. I think one thing that ruined a lot of projects actually is bending and giving in to that FUD, because I wouldn't necessarily say having a project moon is the best metric of success. To me, the metric of success would be in 10 years to look around and see who is still standing, who has grown a community of fans beyond the NFT space, beyond like Web3, and then I think to me that's a metric of success. Like the brand is still around, like regardless of price the NFT is at. I think right now we're using very narrow definitions of success in the space. So yeah, FUD management is it requires someone to have gone through it to understand, okay, you know what, you FUDed me enough, go away. Wanted to do, don't believe it, sell, dump, I don't care. At least that's what happened to me.
I would say, like, in terms of what Z was saying and what you're saying, Chanel, that FUD, I think sometimes people like overgeneralize that term. I think being in the Web3 business, like we're in a community-driven approach. So I think sometimes people lump like feedback and they just like label it as FUD because they don't want to deal with it. But I do think in terms of being like a brand that has longevity, which I think means more than just having funds. I think it's your reputation in the space does matter, is being adaptable to, changes and trends. Like, for example, like Doodles, we saw Doodles came out with Space Doodles, which was a non-dilutive upgrade. And then you look at Yuga Labs, who has printed a lot of money for their ape holders. They gave them mutants, serums, lands, coins. And those people were happy because they were basically like given instant liquidity, like quote unquote value. And lo and behold, Doodles did eventually drop duplicator, which were, sellable assets. While they were originally championing the term non-dilutive, like they didn't want to make their collection size bigger, but they eventually realized that like the meta was changing. Like, in order to expand your ecosystem, you do have to drop things that like, cost money and like do, like expand your viewer base. So, and I would say at the time that was FUD. People were like, well, Doodles gave us this spaceship, but it doesn't cost any money. Like, why can't we decouple these two NFTs? And they're like, look, that's, we're sticking in our lane. They didn't decouple the Space Doodles because they have a much bigger vision for what that technology is. It's like upgrade your profile picture into something new. But they also did, take a page out of the book of people like Yuga Labs and Proof. So, but I know what you mean. I think like success in this space is subjective. I mean, like I guess in your sense with Tasty Toasties, like you had a Web 2 vision in mind coming in and you're like, okay, like I want to market my brand and then, figure out a way to launch it. I do think some people like do come into the space and they're like, I'm just seeing where this thing goes. You know what I mean? I don't know if everybody is as calculated. But I think feedback is super important, but to that avail, not at the compromise of, like the reason why you're building.
I love that, Tony. I think that that distinction of the difference between, misappropriating feedback as FUD. Again, when we were talking earlier about knowing what the North Star is, if the North Star is the work, the art, then feedback could just be that it's not a fit for them. Thank you for the feedback. This sounds like it's not for you because this is a body of work which is an expression of a particular vision or something I wanted to get out of myself, and it's out now, and that's wonderful. It is what it is. Whereas North Star is the community for building something for a body of people to solve a pain or a need for a particular body of people, then we've got to differentiate the difference between there being wrong fits and there being pain experienced by the right fits. What is FUD and what is feedback? The feedback we need to listen to and try for all of our flaws to hear as feedback and not misappropriate it as FUD when actually it's somebody genuinely trying to help us by giving us some guidance and helping to point us to the North Star. Perhaps it was in a slightly different place than we thought it was, in which case that's really helpful. And that's sort of the opposite of FUD, really.
Yeah, because I think it's important to not be like perceived as like being stubborn and thinking like, acting around like from the beginning I knew exactly what I was going to do and I know everything in the world. It's like nobody is a professional at this stuff right now. Even the people that have got venture capitalist funding, there's something to learn from everybody, is I think like a really important thing, like keeping an open mind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
I mean,
agree.
if we, sorry, Z,
Sorry.
I've got lag
No,
on
I
my
was
line.
just
Don't you worry.
No, I was just about to say, I mean, it's just to add on to that. I think it's always important, as a creator or founder to avoid tunnel vision, right? So I think based off of that, I love constructive criticism. I think, I love, speaking to people with different perspectives around the same topic as well. And that I think is part of being in a niche. When you have I think a larger proportion of your community giving you that feedback with their perspective, right? So I think that is what I definitely love about the space. FUD will always come. I think, in terms of haters, in terms of people who, joined the project for the wrong reason, they bought in for the wrong reason whatsoever. But in my opinion, I think I have had a lot more experiences with people who were more constructive, who gave great ideas, a lot of which we've actually taken on internally at the team as well. So yeah, definitely I agree. And I do love the fact that, having different perspectives help to actually keep you on track rather than derail you from what you originally planned.
If we had Salvador Dali listen to feedback of people saying, surrealism sucks, what do you mean it sucks? What am I going to do? And he works on something totally different, then his North Star of art needed to be, that's what he needed to listen to. Whereas, when we saw in sort of 2007, Microsoft saying, nah, this iPhone stuff is lame, it's never going to work. Then that's misappropriating feedback and is FUD. So I guess it's very much the intention of the work and the creator as to whether or not we need to really listen and distinguish one from the other.
Love the Salvador Dali example. That's so funny. Yeah, because I get what you mean. Like, tunnel vision's no good. We have to be able to take feedback. But I do think, sometimes the feedback, when it's given constructively, I definitely take it all into, I definitely think about it. I think, we've definitely implemented a lot of ideas from the community. In Singapore, we have a partnership with a cafe that was actually brokered by one of our community members. He helped us out with the whole thing. So we definitely take all of this into consideration. But when I hear FUD, my impression of that word, please correct me if I'm wrong, is when it comes in a very aggressive manner. And that's what I also feel is something that, as a whole space, we should speak up against. Because I don't think there's a need to be aggressive to one another or project founders or, creators. Even if they did something wrong, I mean, to me, it's just like basic level of respect, right? So, yeah, to me, that's how I would classify FUD, when it's really, really, really aggressive. Because especially when you're reading online, you never really know if it's like trolling or is it real. That's kind of for someone to like peace out. But yeah, everything else, I think feedback's great.
Yeah, I mean, I think like what you're making me think of is, I think right now, and a big emphasis that some of the projects are putting, which I think is absolutely quintessential, is on like mental health awareness. I think like it could be, like maybe seeing a new meta changing to like pushing the stop the FUD movement, because I mean that is mental health awareness, just like I think more targeted.
This has been an amazing topic. I just wanted to add on to what you've all been saying, where I think it takes a little bit of definition for what a niche is. And for me, I personally define a niche as, your wheelhouse or almost like a home. So whether that's in a market or a role, thinking of a niche as your project's home, I think it stems from a place of confidence and also having a solid foundation. So just as you might personally have a goal or mission for your life, no matter how you evolve or adapt throughout your lifetime, when you found your passion or you found your niche and you know yourself, it becomes much easier to be receptive to feedback as opposed to being able to shrug off anything that is, air quote, FUD or more negative and doesn't necessarily apply to you as a person. And so in the same way, I would translate that over to the same way that you become receptive to feedback toward your project while still being navigate and have a reasonable expectation of what needs to be done and accomplished for your project to progress in holistically filling its niche. So that's one thing that really triggered that kind of thought process for me. So thank you for bringing that up.
Whoa. That was like a crazy epiphany. Like, I mean, essentially you're just like, it's really important to like know who you are, kind of like a moment of self-actualization. Because once you can figure that out, you can find out what your project is. And yeah, like when you have a vision and you can start catering your energy and resources towards that, then, I mean, just like doing things with a purpose is absolutely the way that you progress.
There's possibly quite a deep connection between our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with FUD. In this, if there is feedback coming our way, maybe we've taken on a nuance of a project, or we've taken some actions or steps that aren't the best fit for our audience or aren't the best fit for our work, and somebody says, it doesn't seem like it's a good idea, or it looks like you maybe failed at that one, huh? And an insecure man would be like, no, it's fine. Whereas, if you're at peace with yourself, if you've got a good relationship with yourself, if you're living virtuously, if you're in, you're living in accordance with your nature, you can strip out all of the insecure babble that we've got in our own heads that are being sprinkled on top of otherwise great information. So it's possible that there's quite a big relationship there between. Sometimes we could be getting feedback and fudding ourselves by accident.
I feel like I did that a lot. I fudded myself a lot.
I mean, are we really Web3 creators if we haven't found it ourselves? So I just think it's part of the journey. I mean, I definitely love it though. So yeah, I think at the same time, the other part I think you guys slightly touched on is, finding out more about yourself, acting on that. But I think there's also another factor that plays into, establishing your niche, which is building your support system, right? And I think prior to NFT NYC, I had spent more time on the phone with the rest of the RCC team than I had spent with my girlfriend in the lead up to the Invisible Friends Mint. And I hadn't actually met them in real life before, but when we actually met in real life, it was pretty amazing. And I would say meeting them has been a life-changing event as well. So I think, having a support system, people who understand you, people who have different points of view, but with a common goal, is also a very, key step in establishing your niche, and at the same time also being flexible around whether or not that niche changes over time.
I completely agree. And I love the direction that the conversation has taken, just kind of going down the rabbit hole and reaching a certain place of depth and allowing anyone who might be listening or thinking about starting a project or even looking at where they are in their own project to kind of begin that reflection on what they could do to help progress or maybe take even just a tidbit or morsel of information. With that said, it is now 47 on the hour, so the code for the POAP, if you have been listening, is Kumortiverse, and that is KUMOR, T as in Tom, I, V as in Victor, E as in Echo, R, S as in Sam, E as in Echo. Kumortiverse. With that said, does anyone else have anything they would like to bring up at the moment, or anything that was randomly triggered or sparked as we were having this discussion? Audience, if you'd like to come up as well, feel free to request.
Everyone's minting their POAPs.
Like, give me, yeah, no, I don't need to bring it.
Web. I didn't know there was one. Wow.
Yeah, there's a POAP every single Kumo talks. And then I
God.
also think we have one for like each workshop too. Yeah. I personally, I'm obviously not Kumo, but I haven't minted any. And at NFT NYC, Kumo and I were talking about it, and we were both like, yeah, we haven't minted our own POAPs.
Oh my gosh.
But also half the time Kumo forgets that there's a POAP. So, there's a difference there.
Wait, so is it Snow? Are you behind the Kumo World account?
Yes, it's I have a mask right now, my Kumo mask. I'm like, hello.
Snow, yeah, we said hi in New York. I don't know if you remember.
I do. Oh my god, the toasty was so squishy.
Yay! Oh yeah. We were at the entrance of the event. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. I'm gonna just casually hype up Tasty Toasties because those plushies are so soft. So if you ever get a chance to go and check those out, that's honestly a staple you want to have somewhere in your house that you can like lay on and just like squeeze, cry into as people are fudding you,
Yeah, you can lay on it while the market is a bear. Go to sleep, hibernate, feel toasty, recharge, and then someone will wake you up when the bull market's back. No, I'm kidding. The plushies they're slated to arrive in the warehouse by September. So then I'll launch and open the shop by then. Because I'm doing it in a different style from other projects. I think most projects, they take pre-orders, then they ask you to wait like 3 to 4 months after they collected your money. I always felt that there was, like, you guys already raised money, so I'm like, we'll buy the stock, and then we'll sell it. So, yeah.
That's totally okay. I am so excited for when that happens. I will be first in line so that I can cradle that as ETH drops to 0. 100.
No one knows.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on, Adam, Chanel, Mel, Tony. It was fantastic speaking with you, and I hope we'll be able to see you again for more Kumo talks in the future for different categories.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much for having us. It's been fun.
Y'all have a
Tony
great
still
rest
has
of your day.
100 emojis. Damn, I'm so jealous.
He's
That's such
OG.
a flex.
Update your Twitter.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope everyone else has a wonderful rest of their day. We will be putting the Kumo talks up in a sort of podcast form in the upcoming future. So if you ever want anyone to re-listen to this, or if you just want to be able to revisit any of the previous topics or point out, that will be up eventually. And we will be posting announcements in our Kumo Discord and our Kumo Twitter community. So keep an eye out for that. But otherwise, have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!